Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly analyze why Xabi Alonso's first half positional adjustment resulted in Real Madrid's ascendancy in their 2-1 El Clasico triumph over Barcelona to extend their lead at the top of the La Liga table. So when you break it all down and you do look at the board, you have Real Madrid in more of a 4-4-2 with Arda Güler and Jude Bellingham initially starting in narrow wide positions and Vini Jr slightly ahead of the midfield bank, capable of shifting out towards the left touchline zone with Mbappe leading the line, and Barcelona look like more of a 4-2-3-1 with Rashford and Yamal hugging the touchline, Fermin just a bit higher of Pedri and De Jong looking to shift in towards that inside right position to get into space behind Tchouaméni with Ferran Torres leading the line as well. This was evident in the early stages of the match when Real Madrid dropped off into a 4-4-2, and you could see Fermin Lopez pushing higher and pegging back Tchouaméni in towards the Real Madrid backline, and you would see Arda Güler tucking into a narrow central position, looking to step forward with Camavinga to apply pressure towards Pedri and De Jong, while Bellingham was shifting out to close down Balde. The only other way that we'd see that Real Madrid shape shift in the early stages was when they looked to press higher up the pitch, with Barcelona building in a 3-2-5 shape. They would push their left back high and they would have Rashford tucking into central areas, and from there you would have Vini Jr closing down Koundé, and then Arda Güler stepping with Mbappe to close down the center backs, and that's where you'd see Tchouaméni and Camavinga stepping towards De Jong and Pedri. And if that left Fermin Lopez free, then that's where you'd see Hausen or Militao pushing forward to close him down as the spare man. The issue that Barcelona presented Real Madrid in the early stages was the positioning of Jude, because out in that right-hand zone, with Rashford tucking into central areas, he would drag Valverde narrow, and then that would create space for Alejandro Balde to push forward to provide the width down the left-hand side. There were several scenarios in those opening minutes of this game where you witnessed Jude having to track the movement of Balde, and he did do a very good job of ensuring that Barcelona didn't have success down that left-hand side. And ultimately, this served as a disservice to Real Madrid because now Jude had issues impacting the game as he was often being pegged back in towards his own third. This resulted in Alonso shifting Jude and moving him into a central position, and then pushing Camavinga out towards that right-hand side. And now it's Camavinga's job to track the movement of Balde, and Jude did a very good job of applying pressure towards Pedri or De Jong when they got on the ball, and it helped nullify Barcelona's early dominance in those central areas. So while we could talk about the threat of Mbappe in behind that Real Madrid high line, or the threat that Real Madrid could pose down their left-hand side with Carreras making overlapping runs beyond Lamine Yamal who wasn't tracking him, what we ended up seeing here was that Jude did a very good job of finding space in that midfield zone to receive the ball and then play in runners that were breaking into advanced positions beyond him. And he also did a very good job of serving as a reliable outlet to receive possession in central areas, hold off pressure from the Barcelona central midfielders, and then play in teammates that were breaking forward, or simply help Real Madrid retain possession and then push higher up the pitch as a unit. There are several examples in this game where you witness Jude receiving the ball in a central zone, or maybe even tucked off towards the wide area, and he's inviting pressure from Pedri, who's stepping towards him a bit late, and then he's using his strength and his frame to hold off Pedri's pressure, and then looking to drop off the ball towards teammates to slide the ball out towards wider areas, or he's looking to play in the advancing runs of Camavinga or Valverde, who are pushing forward down that right-hand side, given the fact that Rashford wasn't tracking back, and at times Balde was caught higher up the pitch when Real Madrid were looking to progress in towards Barcelona's half. So while it was clear that Jude's presence in that central zone saw him dominate Pedri and ensure that he could help Real Madrid retain possession and push forward as a unit, the other threat that he posed was his off-ball running into space beyond Pedri, knowing that Pedri wouldn't track that movement. And here he did a very good job of getting himself into space to serve as an outlet and help Real Madrid get into advanced positions and in towards the final third. Ultimately, down that right-hand side, Valverde was often a free outlet with Rashford caught higher up the pitch, and then Camavinga's presence would drag out Balde, and from there you could witness Jude simply running off Pedri and looking to exploit the space in behind the Barcelona left back. So while it was clear that Jude was having ease running off Pedri down the right-hand side, Even when Real Madrid were looking to play through the left, Jude was still capable of running or finding space beyond Pedri to get into advanced positions in the final third, and there were a few scenarios where he nearly punished Barcelona simply off his movement in towards advanced positions that weren't being tracked. If you want to hone in on one example in particular, here you could see Fermin Lopez higher up the pitch, and De Jong stepping towards Tchouaméni, who slides the ball around him into the path of Camavinga, and you could already see Jude in beyond Pedri. When Camavinga receives the ball, Ferran Torres and Pedri are taken out of the game, and that's where Jude begins to make a run towards the halfway line. Camavinga ends up sliding the ball into the path of Jude in the halfway circle, and from there he receives the ball, and now he could run at the back four with Mbappe looking to break beyond the high line. However, he ends up shifting the ball towards the left-hand side and sliding it across Koundé into the path of Vini Jr., and that's where you see Carreras already looking to create that overload because Lamine Yamal isn't tracking back. That sees Carreras eventually receiving the ball, and he ends up squaring it into the path of Jude as he ends up splitting Koundé and Pedri. And when Jude receives the ball ahead of the back line, you could see Camavinga's run offside, but now it allows him to slide the ball into the path of Mbappe to place him in a legitimate goal-scoring position as he's 1v1 with Alejandro Balde. And then if we look to another example, it's Camavinga dragging out Balde and dropping off the ball towards Valverde, and focus on Bellingham and Pedri here. Once Valverde receives the ball, now you witness Pedri having to step towards him because Rashford isn't tracking back, and Jude is already looking to run into the space beyond the two left-sided Barcelona players. Valverde ends up sliding the ball around Pedri into the path of Jude, and Jude ends up dropping back the ball towards Valverde, who ends up then dragging the ball back in towards Jude's path. But what Valverde does well here is that he continues his forward run and he drags away De Jong, and that creates space for Jude to carry the ball centrally, and similar to the opening goal, that's where you witness Mbappe looking to make a run in between the center back and Koundé. The problem that Real Madrid encountered here was that Jude hesitates and doesn't play the ball initially, and although Pedri does make a last-ditch tackle to halt the attack, it still guides the ball into the path of Mbappe, who's able to carry the ball into a legitimate goal-scoring position. So it's clear that the key theme that haunted Barcelona here was the movement of Jude Bellingham running off Pedri in particular, but he also did run off Frenkie de Jong, and when you analyze the build-up to both Real Madrid goals and the build-up to the penalty that Mbappe missed, it's Jude's movement that was the reoccurring theme. In the build-up to the Real Madrid opener, you witness Jude dropping into space in between Balde, who's dragged out by Camavinga, and Rashford. And here Camavinga ends up splitting those two players to find Jude receiving the ball freely, and you could witness Pedri stepping late. And when Jude receives the ball, yes, he could play the ball into the path of Camavinga, but he ends up dragging the pressure towards him and spinning away from Pedri. And it's key here because he gains separation, whereas Camavinga's run does force Eric Garcia to shift a bit towards his left to ensure that Jude can't play in towards that passing lane. The issue here was that Jude was able to create such separation that he was able to carry the ball forward, and he anticipated the run of Mbappe in between the center back and Koundé, and because Garcia was dragged a bit towards the left, that created a larger gap between the center backs, which allows Jude to play the ball in towards that zone for Mbappe to run off the high line, and Mbappe is able to carry the ball freely in towards the penalty area and slide the ball coolly beyond the Barcelona keeper. The build-up to the second goal was a bit worse for Barcelona because it witnesses Vini Jr. getting beyond Koundé towards the byline, but it's the cross in towards the penalty area that was poor, and at that time you witness De Jong tracking the movement of Jude. However, when that cross is played towards the back post, it's Militao who gets over the left back in towards the back post, and here you could see De Jong tracking the movement of Hausen with Kubarsi, and that leaves Jude free in the 6-yard area so that when neither De Jong or the Barcelona center back are able to clear Militao's nod back, it falls into the path of Jude free in the 6-yard area, and from there he's able to guide the ball in from point blank range. And then the build-up to Mbappe's missed penalty witnesses Camavinga doing a good job of holding off the pressure of Balde and Rashford and backheeling the ball into the path of Jude, and from here that forces Pedri to shift across to attempt to break down that play, but Jude does a very good job of carrying the ball beyond Pedri in towards the penalty area, and from there as he carries the ball into right half space, he takes on Garcia towards the byline, and his attempted pullback from the byline ends up hitting off the sliding Garcia's hand, and it leads to an Mbappe penalty. So as you could see, Alonso's decision to move Jude into a central position served as the catalyst to Real Madrid gaining control of the midfield zone, whilst presenting several issues for Barcelona, which ultimately led to their downfall at the Bernabeu.